Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Gaming Lounge Podcast, episode 35. Once again, I'm your host, Sebastian, and I'm joined by Dory. How's everything going, Dory?
Hello, I am excited to be here at the end of the year. I've got a few days off coming up, so plenty of opportunities for gaming. I just got to my 50th game of the year, and I'll talk about the games that I've been playing in the new year, as will you, I'm sure, over the break. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about our top 10, and I'm really excited to talk about all these games. Of course, we've talked about all these games before and probably spoiled most of our list in the process, but I'm excited to have a reason to gush about everything that made this year awesome for gaming, which is a lot.
Yes. This is our fifth time doing a top 10 list, which is one of my favorite podcast episodes every single year. I always look forward to this 'cause I think we build our list since starting January 1st. We do this list the entire year and add to it, change it, edit it. We talk about it consistently. I enjoy doing it. It's changed many times, but I would say overall this year, my top five has been pretty solid. Like, it hasn't changed much. I guess the top three changed a lot. My game of the year changed like three times within the same 2 months, but for the first half of the year, like, nothing changed. Uh, but we'll talk about that. All right, so as I said last week, this is our last episode of 2024. We will not have an episode next week to enjoy the holidays and New Year's. We'll be back in January. So the top 10 list is like a review of all of why we love all these games, all these top 10 games. We usually what we do is we'll talk about the things we really really loved, and then we'll say the negatives at the end to say why it's ranked the way it is, like what kept it from being game of the year, or what kept it from being in the top three or anything like that. So we'll typically start with the positives and then go with the negatives after that. So we're gonna have a conversation pretty much for every game. I'm sure I've played every game Dory has played, or at least most of them, and I'm sure Dory has played most of mine as well. We have a lot of overlap this year, which we sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But I think this year we do have a lot of overlap. But we'll find out, right? So let's start with number 10. Number 10, Dory, you can start your number 10. What is your number 10 game of 2024?
All right, holding on by absolutely one of those limbs on the cliff sides is Visions of Mana. I love this game. It's really great. The artwork is just gorgeous. I had one of those like gamer moments where like you just pan around the camera and you just look at the environments and just like you're just in awe of like the art direction and the graphical style and just like everything about this game is just like peak aesthetic. It's just beautiful. I am a newcomer to the Mana series. I do not have any experience with any of the previous Mana games. So when people were like, "Oh my god, a new Mana game," I'm like, "Okay, I thought this was a like respected ongoing series, which it was, but I guess in the past like 10 years or something, they haven't made anything." Um, so a lot of people were really excited about this. I didn't have super high expectations, but I saw some of the gameplay, it looked all right. And then Seb was like, "Oh, I think you'd really like this." So I checked it out, and yeah, it's the combat is really fun. I just think it's really satisfying. Switch around your team members. I love the cat character the most. That has like the power of the moon. He's like kind of an assassin type. He's really fun. He was like probably my favorite to play as. The aerial combat feels really good, really solid, not floaty. The magic system felt really fun. Just the world in general is really fun. I had a really good time just going around this world. I did some of the side quests, not all of them. A lot of them weren't, particularly interesting. And once I started figuring out what the pace of the game was going to be, I just started not doing them at all. Um, but overall, I mean, an incredibly, epic game with really high stakes, of like any RPG usually has. There's some cliches for sure. There's some weird bits about it. I guess my biggest criticism, and we've talked about this before, is there's a bit of a switcheroo with the villains towards the middle half of the game. I think the switcheroo is a complete mistake. I think it really undercuts the promise of the game. I feel like they could have had a leaner, shorter experience that would have been better, and it would have probably been higher on my list. I think it would have made it as high as number 8, maybe. But because of the padding towards the end, because of the villains, and also because of they do rectify this at the last second, but it's a lot of this game is predicated on, there's a lot of philosophical discussion in this game about individual success for collective safety and like what does that mean and like what does that look like? Is it ethical? Is it not? And there's a lot of discussion about that, and it's a theme that I feel like you can present in a good way. Like I just played Season: A Letter to the Future. I feel like that did it really well. But this game, for a lot of it, its protagonists are just kind of stupidly obedient to traditions and almost never question them, and it just really bothered me. I mean, I shouldn't really be thinking to a point. I should be having a Mr. Freeze moment, right? The villain has a point kind of trope, but the level to which I was like, oh yeah, he's got a point, was like hashtag Magneto was right kind of levels, which is like generally speaking not where I should be when someone's trying to threaten the world. But overall, I think it's a really great game. Honestly, every single game on this list is at least really great. And I even have a couple games I would consider, 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10 masterful level. Um, so yeah, the bar was really high to be on this list this year. So despite my criticism, Visions of Mana, a very good game. Beautiful music too, I should say. Very good soundtrack. I didn't go out of my way to listen to it, but every time I heard a song, I was into it. It's got a really nice soundtrack. Yeah, it's a great game. I highly recommend it. Go check it out. Visions of Mana. It's on pretty much everything.
Yeah, Visions of Mana was in my honorable mentions. I talked about it a couple of weeks ago. It's a really really good game. I love the visuals and the colors really pop. That's like the best part for me was the visuals. It had a really cool aesthetic to it. I really enjoyed the class system and the job system in the game. Like that was
Yes.
really, it was really fun to maneuver, like tinker with what class system you want or what costume you want to wear, what like outfit or whatever. Um, I totally agree with all of Dory's criticisms. Reason why I didn't make my top 10 is the story was fine, but I would wish it stuck with the first villain instead of the second villain. The second villain was very generic. The ending was lacking for me. It had some drag. It had a lot of, not a lot, but it had like a good amount of pacing issues where like it dragged at
Yes.
the end. So those are little things why it kept itself from being my top 10. So it was my honorable mentions. I really loved it. I'm not a giant Mana fan, but I've played plenty of them. To say that I enjoy the series. But yeah, I think it's a good pick, and it wasn't my top 10 for a while, but there was games I felt that were better, that were ahead of it. So yeah, I agree with Dory's positives and negatives for it. All right, so let's move to my number 10, which is Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 is the only multiplayer game on my list this year, so this is my favorite multiplayer game of the year. Not that I'm a giant multiplayer fan, but the fact that this game got me hooked really says something because I don't play a lot of multiplayer anymore. And Helldivers 2 is the absolute blast to play. Like it is so fun to play with friends. I would not play this game alone, but playing with your friends is one of the highlights of the year. The fact that you can like kill your friend on accident by dropping like a care package on them, or like summon a rocket, falls on them. Um, the fact that it's friendly fire, uh, it's like Starship Troopers. It's the game basically. You're fighting giant bugs. The robots are a pain in the butt they're really hard to fight. But it is an absolute blast. It's very addicting. It's gonna have long legs. I think they already added they added that patch, the new DLC was it expansion DLC or whatever it is, that with vehicles and all that. This game's gonna last a while. It was very very successful for Sony. It sold a lot. It was well rated. I think it should have got nominated for Game of the Year. I would have been happy. I would have preferred this over Balatro or Shadow of the Erdtree because being DLC. So Helldivers 2 really it didn't get respect. It won multiplayer game of the year. So to be fair, but I think it deserved a little more respect. But either way, Helldivers 2 is fantastic. It is a great game. The customization was good. I feel like the microtransactions and all that were not like anti-consumer. From what I saw, it was very reasonable. It wasn't anything that jumped out at me as like, oh my god, this is terrible. But the only blemish for it this year was just the fact that you had to sign in through Sony, and that pissed a lot of people off and turned people off because obviously not everybody has access to internet like that, and it locked a lot of people out. So the criticism, it didn't affect me. I don't mind signing into Sony. I do that when I log into Steam with certain PlayStation games. It doesn't bother me personally, on the principle, I totally get it, and so I wasn't defending it or anything. But that's really much of this game. Is that the biggest criticism of this game? I would say for me was just it gets repetitive. It's not. It's after a while you kind of do the same thing over and over and over again. There's different types of missions, but at the same time, it's really just the same kind of concept of, you know, get to a mission marker, defend it, fight the bugs, fight the robots, survive, get to the next point, that kind of thing. But even then, it is just like I said, it is so much fun to play, and only play this game if you have friends that want to play this game with you, because this game is not fun by yourself. So let's move on to number 9. Dory, what is your number 9?
My number 9 is a game that I did not expect to love as much as I did. Harold Halibut. This is a really, really well done send up of the Wallace and Gromit kind of movies, the kind of claymation style that Chicken Run also had. It's a story about a man. I know. Stay with me, everybody here. Named Harold Halibut, and they've he's on this basically like space colony underwater that has crashed on a planet. I think it might be. I don't remember. I think it's a made up planet, but they've crash landed. It takes place technically. It takes place technically somewhere around the Cold War. It's kind of an alternative history. So the technology is very retro inspired, but very futuristic at the same time. Me and Seb have talked about already how we're suckers for that. Um, I love the aesthetic of it so much. I love the characters. I love the writing. It's such a genuine game. It's such a wholesome game overall. It does tackle difficult topics such as prejudice and about like corporate takeovers, and like there are serious themes here, but overall the tone is very jovial, very funny. It does humor, I think, very well. The revelations that it comes up to in the middle and second half of the game are very well done. I'm just in love with the way that the world operates in terms of Harold Halibut and its just claymation type mechanical spread. I don't know what you would call it. Um, it's just a game that I had a lot of joy in playing. I love the characters and thought they were written really well, and got genuinely emotional towards the end of it as I was finishing up my time with it. Not a super long game, but I would recommend it. I think it was about 10 hours. I don't remember. But I had a great time with it. I thought it was an excellent game. Honestly, was even higher on my list earlier in the year until a few others pushed it down a little bit. If I had any criticism of it, it's pretty mild, but it does add up over the 10 hours. Harold cannot run for shit. He really, the walking is it's not slow, but it's slower than it probably should be given how much walking you do in this game. I wouldn't call it a walking simulator by any means. There is some gameplay, but it's very basic and very rote. I guess that would be another criticism, is any of the actual gameplay you do in this game is pretty menial. It's not bad by any means, but it doesn't inspire anything.
Yeah, this is.
Yeah.
It didn't make my top 10. It is a game I liked. I played it. I own it. It's a good game. I really like the story. I like the characters. That has a really unique look. The with the claymation with stop motion. It's like Wallace and Gromit, as Dory said. It's very British. It has that like
Yes.
it just has that subtle like humor. But my biggest criticism of the game and why I didn't make my top 10 and why I didn't love it as much as other people, I felt like there was way too much of walking back and forth, like too much backtracking and walking from point A to point B. And as Dory mentioned, he walks too slow for my taste. It distracted from the story and the characters for me, when a lot of the gameplay was like going back and like up one level, back to the other level, going back to the same level. but still a good game, and I really liked it. It's in my top 20 if I was doing a list, I guess. But it's in my one of my favorite indies of the year for sure.
It's uh, probably my second favorite indie of the year, maybe third, depending on what you count. But it's a really great game. I totally agree with Sep, though. There is a lot of backtracking. There's a lot of walking around. I do remember getting frustrated, especially later parts of the game with that. They do have a tube system that helps a little bit, but then that just makes you feel like you're walking back and forth between a tube system all the time. So yeah, I totally understand that criticism and share it to a certain extent.
So number 9 for me is Dragon's Dogma 2. Now, when this game was first revealed, I thought it might be a Game of the Year contender for me, and it's not for several reasons I'll mention. But we'll start with the positives. First of all, this game is one of the best adventure games in terms of the year. Like you can just be wandering down the road, and all of a sudden a dragon or a griffin can just swoop out of nowhere and attack your entire party. Like you can be like minding your business on the bridge, and all of a sudden a griffin comes down and breaks the whole bridge, and you drown. Like it's such a random, awesome game. It's a very unique game because another game did this, is where like anything can happen at any time on your track. Like the whole game is mainly going from point A to point B and going on a journey with your companions and your party that you build yourself. And it's a blast. It really is an awesome game. The biggest blemish on this game was the performance, which definitely is an issue. And it's why it's on the bottom side of my list. There was a lot of performance issues. I first played this game on PS5 and I beat it on PS5, but then I bought it again on PC and I'm still having issues. It is better on PC, but I still having issues. The performance really hurt this game. I think people were really liking it, but the performance issues were just definitely stockpiling for everybody. It was piling up for people. And then I know Capcom did that weird thing with like what microtransactions that pissed people off, but that didn't affect the game for me at all. This game did have some weird microtransaction things that you could get, and they were really expensive for no reason, but you didn't have to. You can totally avoid them, so it wasn't really an issue for me. But those are like minor things. But obviously, performance is not a minor issue. But I think the story was mostly good, and the characters were cool, and the visuals were cool. It's like Capcom's attempt, a Japanese company's attempt at making a Western RPG, and they did a good job at it. And like if you like the first game, you'll like this one a lot. If you don't like the first game, skip this one. It's a very unique experience, and it has a lot of cool mechanics. I can't think of any other. There's no other game that did something where like if you're fighting a giant troll and you're near like a dam or a pile of rocks near water, and you break the rocks and it floods the whole area and kills the troll for you. There's another game this year where when you're fighting a griffin, you can jump and climb on it and smack it while you're hanging on to it. The big battles against like big creatures is phenomenal and really fun. And you can experiment all different class styles and play styles that you want to play as. So everybody can have a different experience, unique experience. So the gameplay was really good. The best part of this game is the gameplay. And obviously a video game, it's all about gameplay. Gameplay is king. So that's why this makes my top 10. It was the best adventure game, like pure adventure game of the year for me. So what's your number 8?
Yeah. Number 8 is 1000 Resist. Some people say 1000 times Resist, 1000x Resist. It's just 1000 Resist. I think people are forgetting the Hunter x Hunter rule. But anyway, this was a really, really late entry. I only beat this game a couple of weeks ago. And it feels like years. But a couple of weeks ago. This is incredible. It won some Indie Games of the Year award. It won some narrative awards recently. I don't remember all the people who gave them the awards, but you can look it up. 1000 Resist has won some awards recently, and I've seen that on Blue Sky, which I've been very happy for them. So hecky grace on that. To describe what this game is even about. It's about the pandemic. It's about discrimination towards Japanese Americans and Asian American people in general and Asians in general. It's about bullying. It's about cults and religious dogma. It's about post-apocalyptic discourse. It's about a lot of stuff, and I really don't understand how. Especially, I think this is their first game. I could be wrong on that. They managed to combine all of that so seamlessly. It's not going to be a game for everyone. I was talking to Tactical Dreamer a couple weeks about it, and he was definitely frustrated by some of the kind of slower sections. There's an area where you kind of just walk around and talk to people, and similar to Harold Halibut, the walking can feel a little slow, but also more of an issue in this game is the map isn't very helpful, and there are just certain areas that are blocked off, and I don't understand why. Like there's this huge greenhouse, and it's kind of like a wall of mirrors for some reason. Not maybe not intentionally, but anyway, that's getting into criticisms. I do have some other like nice thing to say about it before I get to that. Um, Generally, I just find the game incredibly meaningful. I didn't cry to it at all, but you definitely feel very impacted by it, I guess. And that word impact is definitely something I would associate with it. I'm very very surprised that game of the year that the Keeleys did not even recognize this game at all for Games for Impact, because this is the most Games for Impact that has ever impacted games. It's talking about so many social issues. It's from a very big diaspora of Asian folks. It's written specifically for societal change. I mean, it's about revolution. It's literally in the title, 1000 Resist. It's if you don't like politics in your games, I obviously you're not going to like this game, but I love politics in my games, and politics is almost in any game anyway. Um, but it's very explicit here. It's done very very well. No character really feels like a cutout, cardboard cutout. There's very impactful choices that you have to make towards the end. The 3D animation style might not be for everyone. I understand why it could be off-putting to some people. I get that. For me, I just kind of got used to it. I think a lot of the backgrounds are really beautiful. There are some gameplay moments, but similar to Harold Halibut, they're pretty menial. And one part was even pretty confusing for me. But generally, I just think this game is awesome, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who loves a good narrative game, who loves political and philosophical analysis in your games. It's probably one of my favorite indie games I played in a long time. It's one of the most impactful and just incredibly well done. Like I said before, I do have some minor criticisms. I do think the map was a little confusing in the hub area, and I would get confused trying to talk to all of the sisters, because this game follows basically you being stuck in a religious cult, more or less, at the beginning, and slowly kind of uncovering what's going on. Um, but yeah, it's a really good game. I do have that criticism of it, and the 3D style can be a little abrasive. But I genuinely think some of the best voice acting of the years in this game, especially from like the helper kind of robots. They're kind of like the ones from Nier, like literally voice acted by children, and like I'm not even kidding when I say that it might be one of the best vocal performances of the year was done by a literal child. I don't know how, but it's done so well, and like that kid has been doing it forever. Maybe yes, I have no idea, but it's just an incredible game. Honestly, if there's if there's one game from this list that if I could recommend based on mental impacts, psychological impact alone, it would be this game, because this game has really important things to say, and so does Harold Halibut, but this one has more to say and does it better. So that's why it's higher up on the list. And yeah, as you can see, I have very little negative to say about it, besides some navigation stuff, and some menial gameplay elements, which aren't even that big of a deal.
Cool. I'm definitely gonna play it next year. I have it. I have it downloaded on my Steam Deck, so I will play it next year. And I'll let you know. All right. So my number 8 is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which I recently beat because it came out this month, and I really enjoyed it. I think it's a fantastic game by Machine Games, the people that made Wolfenstein, and it feels very much like a Wolfenstein game, just minus like the gun combat. Like just it has some gun combat, but it's not the main focus. This is mainly a stealth game. If you run and gun in this game, you will get overwhelmed. It encourages you to stealth. You can stealth in many ways. It has very different ways of tackling one area. You can climb on top of an area. You can sneak in like through tents, or you can go around, or there's a million ways you can tackle something. This game is very open ended, very open level design. It's not. It is linear to an extent, where like you go from one country to another country, but there's a big open map with a bunch of side quests for you to do, and I enjoyed them overall. But it is very puzzle heavy, so if you don't like puzzles, it's probably not a game for you, because you'll get sick of it. But I love Uncharted and I love Tomb Raider, and it's just obviously Indiana Jones is the OG of that. Those games come from Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is one of the best, well, probably the most iconic adventurer of all time. Like when people think, like in pop culture, when people think of like archaeologist, explorer that goes in like ancient temples, they think of Indiana Jones. Like he's just that bit huge in pop culture, and they did a fantastic job capturing that. I think Troy Baker did a phenomenal job as Indiana Jones. I think he sounded just like Harrison Ford. I think everybody put on a great performance. I think the Nazis are really entertaining. I really like the bad guy. I think he put on a great performance. He was very much so over the top, silly Indiana Jones villain, and it was great. Even the other Nazi guy who was really hilarious. Oh, like he was just really goofy. Like it's very much like Wolfenstein, where everything's like really over the top. And it's always awesome punching Nazis, and you get to do that a lot in this game. And the storyline was mostly great. I thought the ending was a little too goofy for my taste. I thought it was a little too like over the top. Like I know every Indiana Jones movie pretty much has an over the top fantasy element, like the Ark of the Covenant, aliens, all that stuff. Fountain, what was the other one? Fountain of Youth or something like that. And it fell off a bit, the ending for me, but it was still good enough, and I enjoyed it, and I loved everything about this game in terms of the acting and the visuals, and the music is incredible. Where the game falls off a bit for me in terms of like overall why it's not higher in my list is that I would have preferred a more linear game. I think the open sections are mostly good, but they're not for me personally. I prefer more of a. I would have rather had like a 12-hour Uncharted level game where it was more single player, more not single, more like single focused and focus and like more cinematic. Just focus. This game's very cinematic, but focus more on like just telling a story and solving puzzles and things like that. I didn't like the open ended maps as much, and I feel like this. Just some puzzles. The puzzles are, I think, were mostly good. They weren't like overly complicated or anything. I didn't feel like I had to look most things up, but there were a couple times. But I still would have preferred a more linear game, and also it had some janky moments. Especially like there's one section where you gotta throw a trident on mushrooms, and it was very janky, and it would not hit this mushroom even though I threw it right at it, and then it would.
Yeah, I had that too.
And then it wouldn't respawn, and I had to restart the checkpoint.
I had that too.
Yeah, the biggest problem with this game was the jankiness, I think, and like in the menus in terms of like, first of all, autosave in this game is horrendous. It's very archaic. I recently discovered you can load there's different saves you load. It has like chapters, not chapters, but like game slots you can reload into, but they're still like 25-30 minutes earlier, and it's just very annoying. I had to redo a section, and I had to play the whole thing over again. It wasn't too bad, but it was still like, can we just let me do a save right at that moment, or auto save? Like, why are you making me do this? And there was character models that they would stuck in the puzzle or stuck in the trap, and they wouldn't move, and you get locked out of the game, and you had to restart. Things like that. It just added up. I couldn't get. I wanted to like check Google really quick, and I couldn't get out of the game without doing Control Alt Delete, and I couldn't. The Windows key would not work with it. It was like stuck in this weird full screen. It was like little things like that that add up to an issue for me. But other than that, it was a great game. I really enjoyed it. Dory, is this in your top 10 list?
It's not in my top 10. I did want to talk about it for a second. I've made it pretty publicly known I'm not a huge indie fan. I just didn't grow up as a huge indie fan. But I still thought this was a great game. It didn't make my top 10. I didn't think it was a really great game because of some of those issues you said. I thought the open world was uninteresting, and honestly, I just didn't care to be in that world for that long. Um, you do get to punch Nazis and fascists, so it's two for the price of one. So that's great.
Yep.
Always a good idea to punch those kind of people. But so and I completely agree with you. The voice performance was incredible for Indy. I mean, so good that Harrison Ford himself said it. So I mean, can't get much more. And I mean, that guy hates everything, most things these days, especially Star Wars. You can't get asked much more of an endorsement than that. I thought the puzzles, like you said, were largely good. I'm not really a puzzle person, but I liked most of the puzzles. Most of the puzzles I didn't even need help on. If I can do it, you can do it. And there were a couple I couldn't finish, but either that was because I was too tired or because like I had solved about 75% of the puzzle. It's like, all right, let's just move the fuck on. Um, Similar to you, I had some frustrations with the gameplay. The auto saves were brutal. I completely agree. You can't manually save, which I don't understand in the year of our Lord 2024. What are we doing? Um, just ridiculous. Kingdom Hearts did it. 3 did it in 2019, and I didn't let that shit go. I'm certainly not letting it go for an Indiana Jones game in 2024. But um, but anyway, I digress. A lot of the graphics are really good. It's a really graphically demanding game, so I did have to lower the settings, which was a shame. Some of the models look a little weird. And I would say it's tough sometimes to know when you're supposed to go loud, when you're not. There are some general guidelines, like Seb says, if you're surrounded, obviously don't go loud. But sometimes the game seems to want you to go loud, but then you get surrounded. I also had some issues with some of the larger enemies that could just knock you out in 2 punches. I found that very frustrating. It felt like a huge difficulty spike for no reason. And sometimes you just don't have the resources to fight. Also, you're not faster than the enemies are, so if you turn around and try to run away, sometimes they'll just catch up to you, sock you, and you'll die. So that sucks too. But overall, I thought it was a great game. It didn't make my list. Maybe would have made my honorable mentions. I do respect a lot of what Machine Games did here. I hope they continue it. The ending didn't bother me personally, but I was already pretty checked out on the story in terms of like it's an Indiana Jones game. Like there are so many moments where logic just flies out the window and you're like, why the fuck did that character do that? Why did he not kill Indy here? Why did Indy not kill that guy? There's stupid moments like that that just took me out of the game, took me out of the experience, and I'm like, yeah, this is partly why I can't stand these movies, or at least these certain tropes in the movies, I should say.
Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise, I mean, a great game. Not in my top 10, but really, that's just a testament to how good the year was, not how bad the game was.
Yep. All right. Number 7 now. Dory, what is your number 7?
Oh, my number 7 might be a little controversial. It's Dragon Age: The Veilguard.
Oh, wait,
Now look,
that's my number 7 too.
oh shit, let's go. Hey, we don't even need to worry about that silly rule that we used to have for 4 people. Well, I'll talk about it first, and then you can go, I guess. This is look, let me start over. I'm new to the Dragon Age series. I literally started playing it this year. I played Origins, I played Dragon Age 2, and then I played about 15 hours of
Inquisition.
Inquisition. Thank you. Can remember the goddamn subtitle. Inquisition. I love Origins. One of the best games ever. I'm not happy with some of the choices that I made towards the end of the game and some of the end results. But overall, I love that game to death. Dragon Age 2 is overhated and underrated, but I get why people don't like it. That game is repetitive as hell. And it's so clear that Obsidian, or not Obsidian, was it Obsidian? No, BioWare. BioWare
Yeah.
Was really forced to crunch on that game because they reuse assets like hell. And I really liked what I played of Inquisition. I haven't gone back to it yet, but I am going to eventually to finish it. It's kind of tough because I got spoiled on like everything that happens in Inquisition. But I still want to play it because I was enjoying it. I know that the first thing people are going to say is that the dialogue isn't very good. I agree that Origins has better dialogue, but I think for a modern RPG, dialogue just isn't, generally speaking, like, I'm not saying we need to settle for less or anything, but I do think by the standards set by most RPG games these days, I think honestly Dragon Age is fine. Is it a little saccharine at times? Is it a little overly heroic in tone? Sure. But I got many chuckles and laughs out of it. I fell in love with the side characters. I thought the villains were well done. I mean, you just don't get that if your writing is shit. And a lot of people in certain parts of the internet seem to think this game is written very badly and the dialogue's very bad. And look, maybe in the first few hours I thought some of the dialogue was a little shaky, but eventually, I don't know. I got used to the characters. I got used to the tone. I really liked what everyone had to say. I felt like everything was natural. Everything felt good. And again, I'm not saying it's on the level of Origins. It's not. But I mean, it's up there with DA2 or Inquisition in terms of writing. I thought the writing was really solid for the most part. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I liked it a lot more than some people seem to. Really, the jewel in the crown of this game is its gameplay. I played a rogue. I think Seb played a rogue too. So we're gonna have very similar experiences. But I just thought this was a blast to play. I always wanted to find someone else to fight. I always wanted to go on another quest. The companion quests are so well done. I always wanted to help my teammates. I always wanted them to see through, their storylines and what they were doing. I loved my romance partner this time around, and she was really great. And you have to make some hard choices towards the end that I felt were impactful, and definitely kind of gutted me. I'm not saying the game is perfect, but I do think it's excellent overall. I had a really great time with it. I really only can think of Origins as a better experience. Um, there's some stuff I don't like about it, but they're pretty minor. It's called Dragon Age, but I could have used one or two less dragon fights. This game has a few too many bosses that are just dragon, but different elements. And it's like, we've done this like 3 times already. Like, it's a really cool fight, and I have fun every time because the combat's so good.
Yeah.
But like, we can do something else.
Right.
And then I also feel like the gear was not very good. I never felt happy with what my character was wearing. It always felt bulky on me, or uncomfy, or just not stylish, to be honest. And I'm not the queen of fashion or the ruler of fashion, whatever the non-binary alternative is. But I never felt comfortable in the clothes that I wore. But I will say, speaking of being non-binary and shit, there is a beautiful story of being trans in this game that I personally was able to experience because I had my character identify as non-binary. I can't emphasize how well this was done and made me uh, personally feel seen. Sorry, getting emotional thinking about it. And how much that means to a lot of trans people, especially right now. Not to get too political, but just in the times that we live in, it's a big deal for a big video game like this to do a story like that and do it so well. And it didn't feel hackneyed. It didn't feel easy. It didn't feel like it was like, oh, being trans is awesome and everyone should just accept you. Da 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 da. Obviously, everybody should, but it was a well told thing that I know for a fact because I've seen from some trans people on Twitter and elsewhere that they got people who are trans and stuff to help advise on the story. Um, it was just done really well, and as a trans person myself, I was deeply moved by it. And again, to go back to my point about writing, you just don't get that if the writing sucks across the board, like some people seem to think. Um, Last couple things I'll say: the graphics, the environmental graphics, and the music are both amazing. Especially the graphics, just the background art is just beautiful. And I just had a lovely time taking screenshots and looking at character models, and yeah, this was an excellent game. Only second to Origins for me. I haven't finished Inquisition, so I don't know how it ranks, and it would be unfair to rank these two, comparing to each other. But I loved it, and I would recommend it to any Dragon Age fan. Ignore the haters. This is one of those games where if you don't have a little, I'm going to modify the quote. If you don't have a little bench in your ear telling you that this is a terrible game, I think actually it's really good, and people should give it more of a shot. Um, I am really excited for what BioWare does next, which is not a sentence I thought I would be saying. But if they knock it out of the park with Mass Effect like they did with Dragon Age Veilguard, I'm going to be super pleased. So that's my thing on Veilguard. It's not perfect, but I think overall it's an excellent game.
Yeah, you pretty much nailed everything I would say. Like, I agree with you 100%. Best part of the game is gameplay. I think the gameplay is really, really fun. I played it on PC. You played it on PS5, I believe.
Right.
I play with a mouse and keyboard, and it really plays very well with mouse and keyboard. It's a blast to play. I played a rogue character, and I loved using the bow, and I loved how my character was designed, and being like athletic, acrobatic, uh, dodging. Instead of like no, instead of being like a big tanky character or mage or something, I was like dodging constantly, and it was really fun to play with, especially two blades and stuff. Um, the storyline was mostly good. I I really liked it overall. The side characters were awesome. I really had a great time with it. I agree with the criticism of it being too heroic, where everybody's like too happy and too witty and too. But that's like a nitpick, so it doesn't like I don't dock a lot of points for that or anything, but it's definitely there. I do miss the edginess a bit from the previous games, but it's not a big deal. This is definitely like a very colorful, have fun fantasy adventure that has some dark moments, and the story elements really do matter, especially later on. But it is definitely more of a colorful Dragon Age in comparison to Origins, I would say, right? Because like, or
Yes,
even in design too,
I would agree.
which was the big criticism for a lot of people. But that didn't really bother me. I had a good time with it, and that's ultimately what matters. And I think this game also shines in its visuals. I think the environments look incredible, and really, especially on my PC ultra settings, it was incredible. But the environment, especially, just looks amazing, and it runs really well on the Steam Deck, which is awesome. Which is crazy to think that it runs well on the Steam Deck while also being really good on a high end PC. And the music's really good as well. It's not my favorite soundtrack. It's not my top 5 favorite soundtrack of the year, but it's definitely among the best soundtracks of the year for video games. And yeah, I really had a great time with this game. I agree with all of Dory's criticisms and all of Dory's positives, basically. Like, pretty much 100%. There's nothing I disagreed with. Like, it's your criticisms are my criticisms. And yeah, like, I think it's a fantastic game. It's not the best game. There's reasons why, as I mentioned, or it's not my top 6 because I think the games above it had better storylines. There's a lot of gameplay elements that I liked better in the other games as well. We'll talk about that. But overall, it's a great game. I'm glad Bioware is back. I really don't care what people say about the game. I form my own opinions, and I had a great time with this game. And I will probably play it again at some point, but we'll see. All right. Moving on to our number 6. So, Dory, what is your number 6?
It's time for Will Seb get mad at me. Silent Hill 2 is my number 6. I am new to the Silent Hill franchise as well. So that's another new franchise I started this year. Um, I was so torn between whether Veilguard was going in front of this or not, because technically the gameplay is definitely better in Veilguard, but Silent Hill 2 is also not really a gameplay game. But the storyline's definitely better than Veilguard. But Silent Hill 2 is supposed to be, So I just went back and forth, back and forth. Ultimately, Silent Hill 2 just resonated with me more. It stayed with me longer. It meant more to me on a visceral level. Just some scenes from the game that I'll never forget. Some areas that I'll never forget. Um, Whereas Veilguard is such a long game, and there's a lot of highs, but there are moments here and there where I'm like, eh. Whereas Silent Hill 2 always felt very consistent in its tone, in its application, in its execution. Again, I've never played any Silent Hill game before. I didn't grow up on them. I didn't play it as a kid. I didn't play it as a teenager. I never played it. So this was my absolute first time playing Silent Hill 2. I almost played it a couple years ago when Mitch, encouraged me, I'll say, to play Silent Hill 2, but I didn't do it. I was pretty confident that a remake was eventually going to come out, and I just waited till then. And look at me go, because I got rewarded, because here it is, and it was really fucking good. Look, I love the story so much. I think it's so well done. The voice acting is incredible. The graphics are great. Um, the atmosphere is so tense. The music is amazing. I just think they hit every note. this is Bloober team. Seb and I both were very unsure if Bloober was going to be able to deliver on this, given their checkered history of ups and downs. But they did. They did an incredible, and I'm not afraid to admit that. I know some people online won't admit it, but Bloober team really stepped up. They did a great job addressing certain themes that they have failed on in the past, to be quite honest. But not here. They left pretty much everything intact from Konami's original, and as such, it shone really brightly. I just think this game tackles incredibly important topics. Sexual abuse, marriage, depression, loneliness, isolation, lots of stuff, and it's just done incredibly well across the board. Now, if I had some criticisms of it, and I do, I understand that the gameplay is not supposed to be the highlight. It does feel like sometimes that, and I understand also James is not RPD, and he's not Leon Kennedy, and he's not many other survival horror icons who are like, got all their licenses in martial arts or some shit. But it does feel sometimes a little too clunky and awkward. Most of the time, it's just when enemies are faster than you. I had a really bad experience with one of the bosses, which we talked about on the podcast, and that it didn't sour me on the game, but I was very frustrated in the moment. I typically allow any game to have one really bad boss because it's just difficult to make every single boss hit for every single person.
Yeah.
And I also recognize that my experience was pretty unique because from what I saw online, pretty much no one else had my issue.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it was,
It was one of the best.
I sucked in that fight.
It was one of the best boss battles, and it only took me one try.
Yeah, I hated it, and it took me like an hour or two, and literally like stopped me from beating the game. That the night that I played it. But that's video games, right? It's more of a subjective thing than for a lot of other things because you're literally controlling what happens. But again, like I said, video games are. I was more than fine with them having one fight I did not like because every other fight was great. It was really funny too because right after that fight, I was kind of nervous about future boss fights. Kind of had a crisis of confidence, which is nothing new for me. And I was like, "Wow, maybe I'm shit at this game." And then I just beat the next like little mini boss in like 5 seconds. Right? I was like, "Okay, no, it's not me." So and I beat like the final boss, I think on my second or third try. So yeah, again, it wasn't that. I don't know. It was just a bad night for me. But anyway, some of it does feel clunky when the enemies are too fast and they're running around the floor. James is just swinging like a madman, and it just feels bad. Your hits almost never find purchase, and it just kind of sucks. I will say sometimes I got stuck in the map and got lost and couldn't figure out where the fuck I was going. That said, pretty forgiving about that. It is literally a dreamland / nightmare land, so it's very on theme for Silent Hill 2 that I would get lost sometimes. And the map is generally pretty good, but every now and then in a building, especially actually more than being outside, because usually in buildings, not outside. I would get lost every now and then. I think really that's it, though. I get lost sometimes, and every now and then the combat wasn't fun, and that's really it. Everything else is just incredible about this game. I mean, the voice acting, the storytelling, the writing, the graphics, just everything and how it was done. I was incredibly impressed by it, and that has actually made me excited for the next Bloober Team game. I don't remember what it's called, but they showed a preview for it, so actually gonna watch out for that. So yeah, good job, Bloober.
All right, I'm not gonna talk about Silent Hill yet until I get to mine. 'Cause it's in my top 5, so I'll talk about it then. So let's move on to my number 6, which is definitely gonna irritate Dory, because for me it's Like a Dragon: Infinite Wealth, which I think is a fantastic game. RGG is just one of the best studios right now. They're just churning out these games left and right, annual games now, and they're all really good. Um, they have magic right now. They know what they want, and they know what game they want to make, and they have these the same assets, but it's still enough where it feels very different from each other. Like I feel like Judgment and Ishin and Like a Dragon and the other Yakuza series all feel different from each other, even though they're very familiar but also very different from each other. This game is a turn-based RPG, which like the first game, it's a sequel to the first Like a Dragon game. which also was a turn-based game, and it's really awesome. It's very over the top, goofy, as you expect from the Yakuza series. One of my favorite series, and it's Kiru's like basically final hurrah, final like he's been with him for 20 years basically, and it was a great new beginning, but also ending for old character. Um, and I think it was a fantastic RPG overall. I think the world is really fun. There's a lot of side content, like lots and lots of side content. Random things can happen at any moment. There's so much mini games and fun things to do. This game can easily be very long if you want it to be, but you can also like streamline it at times if you just want to like not do every single side thing, which is how Yakuza games are. You don't always have to run through the whole game, and play every single side content. But this game has so much impact in one game. It is one of the it is the best turn-based RPG of the year, if not for another game I'm going to talk about later on. But it was an incredible experience. It came out in January, so I think in a sense it got underappreciated because like a lot of great games came out since, and I think it didn't get enough respect at the Game Awards. I think it definitely should have gotten nominated at Game Awards for Game of the Year. I think it's that good of a game. I think the acting's fantastic as you expect. The storyline's really good. The music's good. I think if you like the Yakuza series, this game is one of the best Yakuza games, and they're all really a lot of them are all really good. And there's nothing like this game is just phenomenal. I would say the reason why it's not my top 5 is I feel I feel like this with every Yakuza game after a while. Sometimes I kind of do get bored. Sometimes I kind of want to pick up the pace. I feel like this game was very long, and it happens to me every Yakuza game. I just feel like I'm really in this story, but then the side content happens. And I'm like, I want to do it, but sometimes I don't want to do it. I just want to like just experience the story, and that's how I feel about this game. Is that it's just very long, and sometimes I was not in the mood to play it. And I was kind of like not happy with playing it, so I was just kind of trying to get through it. But that's only minor things, like because overall I had a blast with this game, and yeah, I think it's a fantastic game, and it's I know Dory loves it as well, but I'm sure she'll talk about it later. But I really like this game. I think it's fantastic. So yeah. All right. Our number 5 now. Dory, what is your number 5?
Hey, it's Monkey.
Oh,
Black Myth Wukong.
that's my number 5 as well.
Yeah, when Seb's like, we have some overlap this year. He was not kidding.
Yeah.
Look, I wanna put a disclaimer out. I don't like the studio a lot at this point. I think they're kind of weird and they've got some weird stuff going on. It's disputed whether anything at the Game Awards actually happened. I guess somebody who was also sitting in the row said it didn't happen. I don't fucking know. But regardless of backstage studio shenanigans and old misogynistic posts drawn up on social media, I can't deny that this was an incredible experience for me. I This was probably one of my first major Souls like or Souls light experience. And I just had an absolute blast with it. There's a couple bosses I lost my mind on, and Kim probably wishes I had given up on about a half an hour earlier, if not an hour. But generally speaking, I loved this game. It's a gorgeous game that I didn't get to fully appreciate because my computer was not up to the task. But don't worry, everybody. I decided to buy a new laptop, and then I went back and played it literally just to see how beautiful it was. And then my jaw hit the floor, and I had to go see my dentist. But anyway, so I really love this game a lot. The combat is obviously the point of it, and it's incredible. It just feels so satisfying to bonk everybody on the head. All the boss fights are incredible. They're so fun. They are infinitely replayable. The Everything feels very harsh, but it feels fair. I like even some of the sidekicks and some of the people that you meet in the hub world that you get later in the game. The guy who gives you the pills, I love that guy. Can't remember his name, but he was fucking awesome. And every time he was like uh, doing quotes about pills. I was like, hell yeah, dude, give me those pills. And then I had to be admitted to a hospital. But yeah, so it's just an awesome game, and I have reservations about the studio and some backstage stuff there, but it's hard for me to deny, like I said earlier, that this game isn't a really good piece of work in terms of being a very very fun game. Now I do have some criticisms. Of course, it is in my top five, but just barely. I think the story is just kind of whatever. It's kind of there. I don't think they really told it well for a Western audience, and that, by the way, is fine. They do not have to make everything palatable for a global audience. It's their culture. It's their story. If they want to make it like, hey, you should fucking know what's going on because it's literally one of the best known myths in the whole world, and Dragon Ball Z is literally more than okay with that. But it does have its drawbacks. It does mean that I wasn't as engaged in the characters or the story. I don't think it was bad. I don't think it dragged the game down a lot, but I do think it impacted my enjoyment of the overall product. I'm sure Seb is going to vigorously agree with what I say next. The last couple of chapters, especially that last chapter, I don't really know what they thought they were cooking, but I'm not a huge fan of it. I think suddenly a narrow, kind of singular-minded action game became semi-open world, and I just don't think they made that transition very gracefully. I could see it happen throughout the game, and I appreciated the attempt, but it was tough finding those bosses in the last phase. I thought it padded out the game a little bit much. There's like a boss that you have to fight that you have to like rip its antennas off, and I found that part very annoying and very finicky with the action commands that you have to put in. Um, but those were like the only things really that I had an issue with is the story and the last chapter. I would say maybe the last two chapters. There is a prison section that you're in, and it kind of spirals upwards. And if you get knocked down, it fucking sucks. But other than that, I loved the level design. I loved the combat, the music, of course, incredible. The sound design in general. Um, it's just a fucking awesome game. And even the studio being weird isn't going to stop me from appreciating it. So yeah, it's my number five. I'm sure there's other stuff I could say about it, but I'll let Seb take over.
Yeah, Black Myth is a fantastic game. This is my top five now, so this is my five favorite games of the year. And Black Myth Wukong was an early game of the year contender for me. Like right when I even from the first reveal of it, I was like, "What is this game? Why does it look so good?" And it really held up to the standard that it placed when it first got revealed. Because the visuals of this game are absolutely incredible. Like I played at ultra settings and got a high frame rate, and this game is just mind-blowingly good. It is perhaps the best looking game I have played this year. It is absolutely gorgeous, except for Chapter 6, which had a lot of performance issues, as Dory mentioned. But it was a really, visually, arguably the best of the year. Gameplay is also really good. The gameplay is a really fun. The bosses are really unique from each other. They're different and they're great and they're fun to play. There's all skills you can do and moves you can unlock, and people can do all different types of play styles with how you want to play as Wukong or his ascendant. And I think the gameplay is king, and gameplay in this game was absolutely fantastic. So the game, what it had going for it was the visuals and the gameplay. Storyline was definitely not the strength of this game. It wasn't bad. I think I understood the gist of it, which is all that really mattered. Was just trying to get, just like basically you're reincarnated as Wukong, and like, you're like his descendant or something. But the storyline is definitely not the best part of it. It's the weakest of the top five for me in terms of story. And I think where this game falls apart, even though it's not major, it's definitely there. First of all, the performance issues. Like, you have to have a high-end PC to play this game, PC-wise. And it's not great on PS5. And it on the Chapter 6, you can definitely tell that they rushed the game, and that they felt, because the game was supposed to be longer, and they had to cut it. You could tell that like there was a lot of time management stuff behind the scenes that they had to figure out, because you could feel it in the ending. It feels very rushed. the whole chapter 6. The bosses just didn't hit the same way. This game definitely has a lot of difficulty spikes. There's like you'd be fine most of the bosses, and then all of a sudden, this one boss would just be like really hard out of nowhere. But thankfully, the checkpoint system in this game is very forgiving and very good. It's not like old school Souls games where you have to run all the way back and go through a bunch of enemies again over and over and over again. So it's very forgiving, more modern. It's more casual in the sense that it's not as hard as Sekiro or Elden Ring, but it's still not a walk in the park either. I thought the armor sets in this game looked absolutely incredible. You know, Dragon Age was one of my problems with Dragon Age, that the armor didn't look as good. In this game, the armor looks amazing. It fit the Chinese aesthetic so well. It looked really awesome on the monkey guy, and it was great. Overall, this game is a total blast. Visually, absolutely incredible. The set pieces, the cinematography, the cinematic moments. Like right in the beginning, I was like, "This is one of the best openings I've ever seen in a video game since like God of War 3." Like cinematically, I mean, it was awesome. And I love Wukong, like the Journey of the West and the whole story. So this game is absolutely incredible. If not for the performance issues and some of the difficulty spikes and the Rush Chapter 6, this game might have been my game of the year, or at least in the top 3. But those criticisms kept it from making it there. So I really loved it. I have issues with the company or the studio, and but I know people are saying this game's overrated now, or it sucked the whole time, and they're trying to push like the narrative that this game is terrible and nobody should play it. I can separate the art from the artist, and I think this game is absolutely incredible. I think you're doing yourself a disservice. I also think if you call this game terrible, I don't think you played it anyway. Because I think a lot of people don't play video games that they talk about, honestly. But I definitely have zero. I have a lot of issues with game science, but this game is absolutely incredible. And if you can ignore the studio, then play this game. If you can't, then yeah. But yeah. Anyway, all right. Moving on to number 4. So, what is your number 4?
I think I've said this before. I'm pretty sure this counts as indie. At this point, though, it's kind of hard to know with the studio and their pedigree and just everything they've accomplished. But it's Hades 2. I know it's not technically out yet, but fuck y'all. I'll probably put it on my list next year too. I don't care. Look, to say that I've never been quiet about my love of Hades would be an understatement. I believe for about a month straight, almost nothing. I almost talked about nothing else besides Hades. I love this game so much. I didn't talk about it a ton this year compared to the past, but that's because it was in early access. They've done some updates lately, but I haven't played them. I'm waiting for the full release at this point. I put 40 hours in. The combat is just as good, if not better, than the first game. The art style is tremendous. The storyline is really, really good. Um, the music, the fucking music. Hades, just Supergiant just knows what they're fucking cooking when it comes to music. They do an incredible job. Um, the um, the writing, all the characters are written incredibly well. You always want to get these little morsels out of everybody in terms of like what are they saying, what are their personalities like, and what's going on in their life or on life. Um, the villain is very good and works in with the gimmick of a roguelite very well. I actually never beat the final boss. I just couldn't. I think I gave 3, 4. It's more challenging than Hades. Spoilers. You fight Hades in Hades. But I actually found him more challenging than Hades, and I actually can never beat him. And I was a little tough for me to square with at first, but I kind of just let it go because I had done so much I had done everything else in that game. And it's just early access, and I got 40 hours out of it. The only thing I didn't get was beating the main villain, and the whatever you want to call him, antagonist. Um, Very challenging, and there's 2 stages to him, and he just hits like a fucking truck. It was a very challenging fight. I hope that they do a little bit more to balance it, or maybe I just need to get good. I don't know. But I did have a lot of resources with me by the time I challenged him, and I did beat his first phase, but then I got to the second, and I was like, "Fuck." Um, I have very little negative to say about this game, to the point that I'd probably, if I tried to say anything negative, I'd probably just be like scrapping, like scraping up like some dirt or some shit, like making up stuff just to like be upset about. The only thing I can really say about this game is for some people, and actually, honestly, for me, it might not feel like enough of a jump to justify a sequel. Yes, it's a new story, and yes, the gameplay is still excellent. And I'm not saying don't make more Hades Supergiant, but it does feel like one of those experiences where I'm not really sure that Hades 2 is needed. And I'm not. I I don't know. This isn't a Life is Strange situation, double exposure situation, right? I'm very glad that they did, and I think it does justify itself. But at the same time, I can understand somebody playing this saying it doesn't feel that different to Hades. There are certainly some iterative improvements. Certainly, they've made some improvements to certain gameplay elements. But I mean, if you like quiz me right now on all the improvements they've made to the gameplay specifically, I probably couldn't even name five off the top of my head. I mean, I haven't played the game in a long time, so that's part of it too. But if I had to point to like why it's not my number one, because I know I barely have any criticism for it, it's just like it's mostly more of the same, which isn't a bad thing. Obviously, Hades was incredible. It was in my top five that year, maybe my top three. I forget. It wasn't my game of the year, which was funny, but I think that year was incredibly stacked.
Well, Last of Us Part
Um,
2. So
yeah, right. It was The Last of Us Part Two, so literally one of my favorite games of all time. And I did have some issues with Hades as well. But this was the original. I mean, but this was excellent across the board. I really have pretty much nothing bad to say about it. It's coming out fully in a 1.0 sometime in the spring, so I'm gonna wait till that, and then I'll probably put another another 40 hours into it. It's an incredible game, and it's absolutely worth your time. Even in don't be fooled by the early access stuff. This is an incredibly polished, well put together, not very buggy. This is like Larian putting out a game and saying it's in early access, right? Like uh early access is like heavy asterisks, heavy caveat. Like this is a
yeah,
game that's pretty much finished.
yeah,
I recommend it highly. Go check it out, Hades 2. And if you want to wait until the full release, you can do that too.
yep, yeah. I will play it for sure next year. I put a lot of hours in the Hades this year, and retrospectively, Ray Hades is my second favorite game of 2020, and so I'm looking forward to playing Hades 2 next year. I got all the achievements on Steam, so I put a lot of hours into Hades this year. So yeah, all right. So for me, my number 4 is Silent Hill 2, as Dory talked about already. I think it's the best narrative of the year. Obviously, that's cheating because Silent Hill 2 is like my top 6 favorite games of all time, period. And I've written articles and done videos and things like that on Silent Hill 2 story. I just love it so much. And this remake did an amazing job capturing the magic of the original game. Um, I think the storyline of Silent Hill 2 is very underrated because it came out in 2001, where I think gaming storylines were not as appreciated as they are now. I think we like narratives a lot more. We appreciate the political themes or themes of abuse and things like that a lot more nowadays. There's more of an understanding of what people go through. So Silent Hill 2 was very much so ahead of its time. But in terms of the remake, the storyline is incredible. As I talked about, the acting was top notch. I think the acting is the best in the of the year. I think Luke Roberts should have got picked for best performance. I think he nailed James perfectly. I think this game legitimately has Hollywood acting, and that I was blown away by the motion capturing, the facial animations, the dialogue. They improved upon it. I know people, the original purists, like original a little more for several reasons. But I really really liked the dialogue of this game. I think it stands out among the best survival horror games of all time in terms of just acting and performance. I think if you're into horror games and you can handle this kind of horror, 100% play it. Visually, one of the best looking games of the year. It is absolutely gorgeous. It does a great job with the mist, the fog, really well. It's very creepy. The monsters look awesome. Like I said, I already talked about the character models. This game is just gorgeous to look at. Music, I already again, I'm biased because I already love the Silent Hill 2 soundtrack, and this is just like a retelling of the same soundtrack, just modernized, and it's perfection. I think the soundtrack of this game is perfect, and I agree with Dory's criticisms. First of all, the gameplay is not bad. It's not bad by any means. It's just not great. It serves its purpose. James is not a special agent. He's just a regular guy trying to find his wife, and there's some jankiness to that. Um, I think the aiming and the gunplay was fine. It's just just overall like the swinging of the bat or the crowbar or whatever. The plank was just weird. At times it was just very janky. The dodging was just a little weird, but it was fine. I thought I was gonna dislike the gameplay more than I did. I just thought it was perfectly fine. It's not Resident Evil 4 remake, but if you go in realistically and expect this game is very more subtle with the gameplay, it's very much so like swing and shoot things. That's it. You're not roundhouse kicking and suplexing the enemies. I think you'll like it a lot more if you have more realistic expectations. But it's definitely one problem with the game. But I think ultimately the biggest problem with this game is the padding out. I think there's several sections of this game where it's padded out. Like they drag things out a little too much at times. This game is a little too long than it should be. It's much longer than the original game, like much longer. I feel like it was longer than the Resident Evil 4 remake, and it had too many repetitive moments where it was like, okay, you're in a new area, pull the cloth off. It's a puzzle. You have to find the pieces for it, put the pieces in the puzzle. It's like it happened like 5 times. I think the underground section went way too long. That was the worst part of the game. Even though it was like really cool, had a lot of awesome elements, cool moments, but it just went on for too long. But overall, it was a fantastic game. One of the best remakes of all time. It brought Silent Hill back. I hope Konami keeps up with Silent Hill now. People Silent Hill has always been underappreciated. It's one of those like franchises where like people know it, the name of it, but people don't buy it. And Silent Hill has never sold very well. And the fact that like people like Dory can play Silent Hill, playing Silent Hill for the first time and loving it is amazing because, like I said, Silent Hill is one of the most underappreciated. Like I said, it's more the name of itself is more famous than the series itself. And I really hope Konami captures captures the spirit of Silent Hill again. Gives us Silent Hill 1 remake, Silent Hill 3 remake, Silent Hill 4 remake, or just give us a new game. There's a couple new games coming out, but I want a new game in this same style and format. Because I was blown away. I beat this game many times. I got every achievement. I got every ending, as I did in the original. One of my most proudest platinums. I'll say that getting the I didn't get the platinum. I got to play it on Steam, but getting all the achievements was much easier than the original game because you didn't have to do like a 5-star, 6-star, whatever it was, 10-star playthrough, which was a nightmare in in the original game. But yeah, it's one of the best games of all time. And but the reason why it's not my top 3 game of the year is that I think the gameplay of the next games were much better. So we'll talk about that now. So Dory, what is your number 3? Your game of the year?
My number 3 da, 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 is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
That's
everybody.
my number 3 as well.
God damn it, Seb! Just copying me flow for flow, bar for bar. No. Yeah. I have so many positive things to say about this. My God, that beach scene with T. No. But no, seriously. I already loved the remake a lot. This is another game that I played as a kid, and I tried to get into it, and I was 9 and scared and had no idea how turn-based RPGs worked, and got my ass beat in that train yard, and I never played it again. And I never played any other Final Fantasy game again. The closest I got was Kingdom Hearts, of course. Um, which isn't very close at all. Um, but yeah, I love this game a lot. It improves so much on the first game. The combat is incredible. The music is incredible. The characters are best in class. I mean, I love all these characters. I love all their stories. I love how Square, largely love how Square has updated the story to be more modern. And many of the twists and stuff that it's done are personally to my anime bullshit tastes, but I understand that they are divisive, and I get why that they are divisive. Um, Especially the ending is particularly divisive for some people, and I understand that. Uh, the story is a lot of fun to play with. There's some good side quests. I wouldn't say anything mind blowing, but I thought it was all fine, if not better than that. Um, this is one of the games have been doing this for years now. They're trying to get you into these fucking games within a game, and Queen's Blood finally did it for me. I did not expect it, but I fucking love Queen's Blood. This was really well done card game that I got super into. Did not expect to like it, but I did. I had a ton of fun with it. I didn't like the other one as much, the military tower defense one. That felt really stingy. And I
Fort
just didn't
Condor.
Fort Condor, thank you. I
Yeah.
didn't like that as much. But it wasn't bad. It wasn't to my taste, and there are some challenges I think are just fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
Um, but overall, I really enjoyed playing it minute to minute. I do have some criticisms. Honestly, the amount of criticisms I have, well, just in terms of scope, are probably bigger than Hades or whatever. But um, I really did not care for the open world in some parts. Some of the areas are just really barren. Some of the side quests are just really time wasty. There's one where you need to like help these like goblins or something in this tower, and you have to keep finding cactuar statues over and over and over again, and then you have to come back later in the game to keep doing it. And I was like, this is a fucking pain in the ass. Who the hell would do this unless you're really desperate for the platinum? Who the hell would do
I didn't
this?
get the platinum on
So,
this.
oh, you didn't get platinum. So there you go.
It's
Not
too
even
much.
accepted.
It's way too much.
Too much. Fuck this game when it comes to 100% completion.
No, I did not.
Not that I was even trying.
I
Not that
streamlined
I
this
was even
game.
trying to. Yeah, yeah. Not that I was even trying to, but it's like, yeah. Um, I I'm not against the stuff they did at the end. I'm not. I didn't grow up on the original game, so I'm coming from a place of like kind of ignorance on. I mean, obviously, I know some things that happen in the original that are tackled by the end game of this game, but nothing super bothered me. I understand it was a little confusing and they could have done it a little better. And I think they were trying to be a little J.J. Abrams with this. They were trying to be a little crowd pleasy. But overall, I liked it, but I do have some issues here and there, but they're pretty small. Some people were really upset by it. I was not one of those people. But again, I'm also one of the very few people apparently who did not play this game as a kid. Or I did play it, but I did not get very far.
Shame.
Um, I know. Um, I think that's really it. I mean, some of the open world missions are really fucking boring, but they're not bad. Oh, I will also say that sometimes when you're doing some of these side quests and it gives you this big open search area, it's really unhelpful. You have no idea where the fuck to go. I think a couple of the side quests, I just had no idea what I was doing or where I was supposed to go. I had to look up a guide just to finish this one mission. Um, but overall, this is an incredible game. I have some problems with it, but most of those problems are optional, aka the open world stuff. And even the stuff that's not optional, like the end game content, I don't have a huge issue with. Um, I think that's about it. I love the game. It was an incredible experience. Um, yeah, I don't know. There's not much more else to say, so I'll leave it to Seb, who also has this as his number three.
Yeah. So Rebirth was my game of the year for most of the year, for the first half of the year, basically, until the next two games that I'm going to talk about. I really love this game for many reasons. First of all, I love Final Fantasy VII. I grew up with it. I beat it 6 times.
What?
I beat it on different platforms. I know the story very well, and I was really hyped for this game, of course, because I really enjoyed the remake. Remake is not perfect. It had a lot of padding issues, which this game also has. but
Yes.
it was really good, and it was in my top 10 in 2020. So obviously, I was really hyped for this game, and yeah, this game did a great job. It lived up to the hype. First of all, the visuals. When I okay, so I played this game on PS5 because obviously it was only on PS5. I bought it in the winter sale because it's on sale right now. So I will be playing it on PC in January. But I'm talking about this from the perspective of playing it on PS5. I wanted to play in performance mode because I like 60 frames per second, and it looked like a horrible game. It looked horrendous on performance mode. Like it was so blurry. It just looked terrible. Once I switched to fidelity mode and played in 30 frames and just sucked it up and played it in 30, it looked amazing. Like it was insane. So that's why I'm really hyped to play it on PC because I can play it in high frame rate while also getting the visuals. Because I in 2024 I have to play 60 frames at least. Anyway, the visuals are mostly once I got that figured out, the visuals look great. Character models are awesome. The environment looks really good. I love all the characters. Obviously, I already loved Final Fantasy 7, so I already loved, Red 13, Sid, Vincent, Yuffie, Aerith, Barrett, Cloud, Tifa. I love all of them. It's one of the best casts of all time in RPG. And they all get their time really well in this game. This game is unique in the sense that it feels like it's open world, but it is quite linear. It's like open area. But if you're largely going from point A to point B, just having an open map with side quests around, but really you can streamline this game, and there's a lot. This game's done in chapters, so it is very much it is very much linear, just a longer linear than you would think. The story is, for the most part, is good. It's good. It's just that it's the ending that's just a mixed bag. Especially for me, because I think Final Fantasy 7 story is already really good, and all you really need to do is just do the same story again. Making all this meta stuff is just overcomplicated and convoluted. I understood what happened, but I'm putting myself in other people's shoes, and I'm like, if you never played Final Fantasy 7, are you understanding what's going on here? Are you understanding there's different timelines? Are you understanding it's a very Nomura storyline, if you know Kingdom Hearts, how convoluted that story got when they started introducing time travel stuff too. Time travel just makes games messy. Timeline stuff just makes storylines messy. So, overall, the storyline's really good, but I'm definitely mixed in some parts, especially the ending. But I really did like the ending too. Even though it was mixed, it was sad. I was emotional. It was really well done. The cinematography was really well done. There was a lot of hype moments. The final boss felt like a final boss, even though it's only part 2 of part 3. It felt like a final chapter. You know what I mean? It felt like a final boss. This game had a lot of fan service, especially if you grew up with it like me. They were really hype. Side quests, not the best side quests I've ever played in a game, but they were mostly good. There's a couple missions that I really liked. First of all, the soundtrack, best soundtrack of the year, by far. I agreed with the Game Awards. That's my pick for best soundtrack. This game had a great mix of the already amazing soundtrack of Final Fantasy 7, but also rock music, techno, dubstep, it was just orchestral. It just had so many mixes of genres, and it did a phenomenal job. All right, what else? Biggest criticism of this game. The padding, like the original remake had, there's just a lot of padding in this game. They're just making this game longer than they need to be, just to drag it out. And I felt it sometimes where I was like, can we just move along now? This is not really relevant to the story. The side content's not clicking with me. Dory mentioned Fort Condor. I liked it more than Dory, but it's still I don't really need to do this. But this problem with Silent Hill had as well. It's this game is longer than it needed to be, basically. And that's ultimately why it's not higher. That's ultimately why it's not my game of the year. Is that I felt like the next 2 games were just paced much better than this game. I felt like this even when it was my game of the year. It was like, yeah, I could see why people don't like this game because it's just too long and too padded out. Yeah, so that's my take on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I think it's incredible. Uh, Top three game for me. Like I said, it was my game of the year for most of the year, but it had issues with the pacing and padding that kept it from being in my game of the year. All right, so let's get into our top two games now. All right, so Dory, what is your number two?
I'm gonna laugh and laugh because these top two games are really a 1-2 punch to Seb. My number two is Metaphor ReFantazio. I another series that I know it's not Persona, but it basically is Persona. And it's a Persona like, and it says the game is so good that it has convinced me to play some of the longest fucking video games out there and be excited about
Have
it.
you
So fuck you, Atlas.
you heard that, guys? So Dory's finally become a gamer. She's playing
That's what,
Dragon Age for the first time, Silent Hill for the
yeah,
first time,
yeah.
Final Fantasy, getting into Final Fantasy
I wasn't.
Seven.
That's right. I wasn't a
Now,
real
not getting
gamer until this year.
not getting into Persona. So
That's right.
play.
Look, I'm not going to say anything super groundbreaking in terms of like why this game is amazing, but I mean the story is just phenomenal. The twists are incredible. The characters are super well done. The combat is amazing. I love it to death. I think it's just such a fun experience. I put 70 hours into it, and I really don't think I had the thought to myself of like, wow, I kind of wish this game would speed it up like I did with those some of the other games we've talked about. I'm sure Deb will agree with that. The
Hmm.
dialogue is so heartfelt. The connections that you make with with the other characters, the themes that it addresses are so good. You know, again, political revolution, tolerance, discriminate, like out and out racism, like the abuse of power. Like what does it mean to be a ruler? What does it mean to be a subject? What does it mean to have a democracy? You know, what is fantasy? Like what is reality? I mean, like this game tackles everything that you could possibly want from a game like this. It's very political, and I like that again in my game. So another very political game in my list. Um, the weakness stuff, the way that the weaknesses work for enemies, I thought was really well done. It never none of the fights felt really unfair. Even the final boss, which I got fucking thrashed by, and I had to turn on the easy mode because I was stupid and I didn't grind enough. Um, I just,
Shame.
you know, I just, I know. I was done. I felt good. I thought I was gonna be able to handle it. I fucking whooped him easily, and I whooped the second boss easily, and then I got whooped, and I'm like, what the fuck? I can't start all the way back. That's 5 hours of game time I'm losing. So I was hacked. But I will do better with that with when the Persona games are. And I shouldn't have underestimated it. But I like looked it up and I was like, oh, this looks fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. Anyway, didn't hold that against the game. I was very pissed, but I didn't hold that against the game because refer back to my Silent Hill 2 point. Every game gets at least one boss fight that really frustrates me, and as long as it's not a holding pattern, I don't really care. This was also pure user error. I knew it was a turn-based JRPG, and yet I did not grind towards the end. So
Yeah.
more fool me. But the side quests are really good. The campaigns are just top notch. The story is just awesome. The only criticisms I have it are incredibly minuscule. Like sometimes I want Gallica to shut the fuck up. She talks too much during the fights, and it really pisses me off. It doesn't really matter at the beginning, but after 70 hours, I'm like, Gallica, can you please shut up? Jesus Christ. I wish there was a way to like kind of drag like the the amount of time she offers advice or says something about battles. I wish that was like an option slider. That's the word I'm looking for. It's again, these are incredible nitpicks. Sometimes there's dialogue, but sometimes there isn't. Sometimes it's voice acting, and sometimes there isn't. And that's a little weird. But I understand it's a massive game. But hey, I mean,
Yeah.
Disco Elysium did it. I don't know, Atlas. I feel like you could have done it too. But that's really it. I mean, I'm not going to say the game couldn't have been shorter, but I was never like fed up. I never felt like, oh, like the game should have been over 2 hours ago or 10 hours ago or whatever, right? It always felt like it made sense why the game was continuing to go, even when you thought it was done. And again, I mean, I'm in my criticisms, but I'm gonna come back around to the twists and stuff, and which is a positive. I just completely made me rethink the game, and just even like some of the UI. Oh, I didn't mention the UI. The UI is incredible too. I mean, it's Persona, it's Atlas. It's best in class UI. It's so immersive. It's so fun to just go through these menus. I never had an issue with it. Sometimes some of the symbology I get confused on, but overall, I love this game so much that I'm going to play Persona 5 at some point this year or next year, I should say. And maybe P3 Reloaded, maybe P4 Golden, or I don't fucking know. I'll play those three. Um, and then my life will probably be over. I'll probably just saying you never see it coming over and over again. Um, but yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about this game. It's incredible, and it was IGN's Game of the Year. So if you haven't, played it, and you don't want to take my silly self as a reference point for it, then IGN, I guess. No one dislikes IGN, right? But yeah, I still think it means something that they were nominated and awarded Game of the Year for IGN. That's a huge outlet, obviously.
Mhm.
Atlas just smashed it out of the park. They're one of those studios like RGG that are just on fire. And yeah, that's all I gotta say.
All right, so my number 2 is Astro Bot, which was the game that replaced Final Fantasy VII Rebirth as my game of the year for a little while till the next game. Astro Bot is an absolutely incredible game. It's the only game on this list for me besides Helldivers that's pure gameplay. Like most of these games are very cinematic, very story based. Astro Bot, it definitely has a story, but it's very simple. It's you're flying through space and an alien comes by and trashes your ship, which is a PS5, and you have to go collect all the parts in all different unique worlds. This game is pure gameplay, pure fun. This is why people love this game so much and why it won Game of the Year at the Game Awards is because it's just pure fun. It's one of the best platformers of all time, and that's a very stacked genre. This is on the line. This is on the level of Mario and Banjo Kazooie and all the best platformers we've played in our lifetime. It is a must play if you like platformers and family friendly games. Like it is incredible. This is one of the best PlayStation games ever made. It is arguably the best PS5 game to this point. I think it is the best PS5 game to this point. First of all, I've had issues with these other games where like I feel like the padding these games were too padded out or too long. This game is perfectly paced. The fact that a 15-hour game, and that's only just the platinum it, 15-hour game is higher than a lot of these games are like 70, 80 hours, is because it's just perfectly paced. It's pure fun. I never was bored. Not once was I bored with this game. Not once. All the levels were very unique from each other. It had all different mechanics that were really fun to play. They really utilized the DualSense and all its mechanics very well. I think the soundtrack is incredible. Um, it, it I think the visuals are really awesome as well. I think it looks really good. Like they knew exactly what platform they were developing it on, and they just made a masterclass PlayStation game. Like it's purely made for the PS5. Like you can tell. I will rebuy this if it comes to PC ever, because I love this game so much. I think Astrobot's here to stay. It's now the mascot of PlayStation at this point. I love that Team Asobi rose from the ashes of Japan Studio, which was always underappreciated by people. Because people blame Sony for closing that studio down, but I also blame the gamers because they did not support those games when they were made as well. They didn't sell very well. And people get tired of Sony making these big AAA cinematic games, but they don't support when Sony was making the smaller AA indie games. And this game is definitely AAA, but it's definitely feels more like a AA game. So support these games because I don't even think this game was a massive hit for like financially. So I really hope people keep supporting this because I think Sony really needs a game like this in its portfolio. It's very important to balance it out. I love cinematic games; they're my favorite, but you need to have these kind of games as well. Um, it they can only go up. And the crazy thing about this is that they won Game of the Year, and they can only go up from here. Like they can make the gameplay even better. They can make Astrobot play even better. They can add more like Mario Odyssey kind of mechanics, more wall jumping, like the crazy 3D physics you can do with in a 3D platformer. There's a lot of things you can do. So it's really exciting because Astrobot the fact that they've already made several games in the series. I mean, Astrobot Rescue Mission is one of the greatest VR games ever made, and Astro's Playroom was fantastic demo on the PS5 when it first came out. It was my top 10 games of the year in 2020, and Astrobot again top 2. So Astrobot is just an incredible series, and I think this game is pretty much near perfect. I have very minimal criticisms, if any. It's like with Hades 2 for Dory. It's just like I don't really know what to criticize in this game. Like maybe it's too short, I guess, but I was fine with it. I thought it was perfectly paced. I guess the price maybe, if you really care that much, but I don't. If I have no issues playing $60 for a short game at all if I really like it. This is also a true tribute to PlayStation. It has so many cool Astrobots to collect from like 30 years of PlayStation. Sure, it's missing here and there, but like it really captured like the spirit of PlayStation, like in terms of the characters. Like I like it even had like Resident Evil, Devil May Cry, Metal Gear Solid. So those I'm glad those companies gave them permission, and I can't recommend this game as much enough. This is one of the best games ever made, and Sony needs to go down this road more. Give me a nice balance, nice portfolio. Put this game on PC. I will buy it again. So, yeah, this would have been my game of the year if not for the next game. This is one of the greatest platformers I ever played in my life, and I've played many platformers. So, must play for everybody. If you think it's too short for the price, wait for a sale. It'll be on sale at a good price, really good, probably next year. Yeah, so it's a must play. It is that good of a game. So, yep. All right, so now let's talk our game of the year. Now, we Dory and I already said our game of the year in our own list and in a different order. So, Dory, what is your game of the year?
A fox on your house, Mr. Cardone. Like a dragon, infinite wealth. Obviously. I look, this was an incredible the January keeps hitting for me. Last year, I'm a huge pro wrestling fan. I swear that's gonna come back around. And like I had like my favorite match of the year to watch, which was Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay at Wrestle Kingdom in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and that was like my favorite match of that year. And it happened like 5 days into the year because Wrestle Kingdom is very early. And then this year, Like a Dragon comes out a bit later in January, but still, it ended up being my game of the year. I played Yakuza 0, I played Ishin, I played the Man Who Erased His Name, I've played Yakuza, I already said 0, right? And I played Like a Dragon. So I'm not an expert, but I know my Yakuza lore mostly. I haven't played Yakuza 6 or 5 or 4, blah, blah, blah. I haven't played the Kiwamis. I told myself I'd get around to it, but I don't really think it's realistically ever going to happen. But um, this game has some of the best characters of all time in a video game, period. I think that's really what sold me on it. I love the characters in Metaphor, but I love these characters even more. I love Kiryu. I love Ichiban so much. During the summer, I worked at a summer camp with kids, and we were doing the Olympics, and and we got to beat Japan, which I was so excited about. And both me and my co-counselor, my junior co-counselor, were huge nerds. So he got the bandana on, and we started chanting Ichiban. It was so good, and I love this game so much. It's not perfect, and I'll get to that in a little bit, but I had so much fun. I think they improved everything. They made the combat better. The story is just as good, if not better. The characters, the intersection between the old and the new, even reflected in the title cover page, is so amazing. just the characters. This game had an Animal Crossing like that I spent 7 to 10 hours on, and I don't even like Animal Crossing. I don't even like that genre of game. And yet I put 7 to 10 hours into it just because of how much I
Yeah.
loved it, because of how much effort went into that game. That mini game, if you want to. I
Yeah.
didn't get into the
This
Pseudomon Pokemon like.
Yeah, it has Pokemon, Animal Crossing, Crazy Taxi,
Yeah.
Mario
I
Kart.
didn't, and I liked the Crazy Taxi. I only did it once, but I mean, like, and I did it. I was doing it at first because it's just a really good way to make money easily, and I needed some new equipment and stuff for late game stuff. So that's why I was doing it. But I started really getting into it, and like, I don't mean like I didn't like go crazy with the decorating and stuff like that. But the loop was so addicting. It was so rewarding. It wasn't until like a few hours in that I was like, damn, this is really good. And like, if you can like do that for me in a genre that I don't even usually like, I do like cozy games. Like I just played, like I said, A Letter to the Future, and that's very much a cozy game, even if it's kind of about the end of the world. Um, I just think that's a testament to how good it is. The writing is incredible. The twists are great. I understand that the ending was a little bit of a letdown for some people. Wasn't quite as harsh as some people may have wanted it to be or felt it should have been. But I was so locked in at this point with the game that it didn't bother me. The turn-based combat is best in class. Like a Dragon is responsible pretty much for me falling in love with turn-based combat, I think. That and Sea of Stars. So I owe a lot to Like a Dragon in terms of getting me into that genre. Because I never really played turn-based games besides Pokemon, of course. But I never really think of Pokemon as a turn-based RPG, even though that's what it is.
Yeah.
I,
It's purely
yeah,
a
I never
turn
really.
based. Yeah.
Right. No, but I never really think about it like that, right? I don't know why. It's just because of the Pokemon themselves, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, but I just love this game, and Ichiban's one of my favorite characters of all time. He's just such a goofy idiot, and I love him a lot. A lot of the characters that I love from Like a Dragon came back, and they were great too. Um, it was just done so well, and Like a Dragon unfortunately has some like difficulty spikes. Thank you, difficulty spikes that this game does not really have towards the end of the game. There are certain things that are pretty tough towards the end of the game, but I never felt like it was unfair. And some of those fights, towards two fights in particular, um, were really difficult in Like a Dragon. But here, I felt really prepared for what happened in terms of the last few fights. I don't remember if I cried to the game. This is all the way back in January. I can't even believe that it stayed my number one. But as soon as I was done with it, I was like, that could be my game of the year right there. Like for me, it's a 5 out of 5. It is an incredible experience. I'm not gonna say it's perfect, uh, but I never got bored with it. I never really felt like it could have been over sooner. I was just so locked in and so into it. To say that I'm excited for Yakuza Pirate Yakuza like a pirate or whatever the hell it's called. I'm would be an understatement. I'm very excited for it. I think RGG is just doing some incredible work. I'm excited for Project Century, which I'm sure will be changed at some point to some really long, cool title. Um, yeah, this is just a masterclass in turn-based RPGs. I'm very excited to see where the franchise of Yakuza goes next, or
Yeah.
Like a Dragon, or whatever they want to call it. And yeah, it's just an incredible game. The side quests, the main quest, the characters, the writing, the graphics. Um, even the optional fights or the fights in the overworld, you can easily outrun them or just avoid them. So there's not that annoying aspect of it, which I sometimes had with Metaphor and other turn-based games or other RPG games this year. I just felt it's very close between this and Metaphor, but I had a long list of small little issues with Metaphor that just held it behind Like a Dragon. So can't recommend this game enough. It was incredible. You should go play it if you haven't already.
All right. So my game of the year is Metaphor ReFantazio. Astro Bot was my game of the year for. I think it came out the same month. So Astro Bot was my game of the year for a couple weeks, and then Metaphor came out in October, and it's the best game of the year in my opinion. I think it's Strong. I think it's the strongest in many categories over a lot of games, and I think that's what makes it game of the year. First of all, the storyline is really good. It's not my favorite story of the year, which would be Silent Hill 2, but I think the storyline is like my second favorite, and I think the characters are the best. It's my favorite cast of this year. Overall, I really enjoyed all the characters, all the side characters, all the main characters. I loved everybody. Um, my favorite character in this game was Hizme. Um, like just a cute little bat mouse creature with a deep voice. Awesome character. This game has so many awesome characters. I mean, like the writing was so strong. The side, the side missions were really good. There are a lot of them. Some of them are fetch quests, and sure. But like I like a lot of the side like stories, the relationship missions and all that were really well done. I was invested in pretty much all of them. Um, Also, the gameplay is incredible. It is turn based, but it doesn't. It it's so well done, and so the UI and the animation and it's so crisp that it doesn't feel turn based. Like it doesn't feel stiff. It feels very fluid. Like kind of like how like I don't know, Final Fantasy X is where like it's turn based, but it feels very fluid. Um, and the gameplay is really awesome. The calendar system is like any Persona game, nothing new. I just we're not. The only thing is we're not in a high school. We're not in modern Japan. We're in a fantasy world. Um, I was really into it. I was super invested in the story. I think this has one of the best stories of the year, and I was invested in who's gonna win the competition. Um, the twist in this game had the best twist of the year by far. The political themes were really strong. There's a lot of conversation in this game about society and classism and racism and judging people. It tackled it very well, very adult. It wasn't on the nose. It was very adult, very mature. This game is very adult, as every Atlas game is. It's very mature. Uh, no, it has blood, gore, swearing. Has sexual like monsters, which they always do that. What else? Soundtrack, one of the best soundtracks of the year, top 5 for sure. I'm glad I got nominated. Incredible orchestral soundtrack. It is mind blowing. I love the combat, the battle theme of this game. It's really good. Dory, you're not muted, so just give me a heads up. All right.
Oh, it should be.
Yeah. Anyway. What else? So gameplay, storyline, calendar system, everything's amazing in this game. Like everything's just amazing in this game. I was mostly never bored in this game, but there were times where I was like, "Can we pick it up?" I think this game does have some pacing issues and some padding issues, especially in the middle of the game. It could have cut some things out, in my opinion, but I was so invested in following the calendar system and making sure I get all the side quests and the relationships correctly that it flowed very nicely. So my only criticism of this game really was just at times I think there's some padding and a little too long. But man, I put 104 hours in this game. I put more hours in this game than any other game, and I will eventually get the last achievement to get 100% this game. It is the best game of the year. It's near flawless. It's not perfect, but it's near flawless. It's not a 10 out of 10, but it's like a 9.6 or whatever. Yeah, it is great. I also would say the visuals are not the greatest in the world. Especially on the Steam Deck, it looks blurry and stuff, but still play really well. But the animation and the art style is so awesome and so cool, and it's something I'll be using avatars and wallpapers and cover art for a long time. This is Atlas's best game, and I don't say that lightly because I love Persona 4 and 5, but this is Atlas's best game in my opinion. So that's crazy. So I'm excited where Atlas goes from here. We'll see about Persona 6. Yeah, Metaphor is incredible. It is best game of the year, in my opinion. So, that concludes our show. That is it for us in 2024. It was a very busy year for us in terms of like deciding like we switched to a whole new podcast this year. We got the 35 episodes this year. I wasn't even sure I was able to do it, but I was able to come back and finally find a good schedule for it. I'm very grateful for Dory for putting up with me and figuring out my schedule. I also am grateful for being here every week. I know it's very hard to at times to commit to a podcast every week, but we manage, and I think we really enjoy doing it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it because obviously we're not getting 5 million views. We just do it for fun. But I really enjoy just having an outlet to talk about video games, which I get that on social media, but it's not the same when you're talking in person to somebody. And I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday. Whether you celebrate Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, or Christmas, I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday season, and I hope you have a happy New Year as well. And Dory, any closing statements before we wrap it up?
Yeah, the defense would like to no. I think my computer has been using its default mic the whole time. But so if I sound different now, I apologize. Do I sound any different? I sound fine.
I'd have to compare it, but you seem fine.
Okay. Okay. Well, either way, I was fine earlier, so and you could understand me, so no worries. Yeah, I just want to thank everybody who has watched us over the year. At one point, as Seb alluded to, we weren't even sure that the podcast was going to keep going, and then we were, and then we weren't, and it was a lot of back and forth, which, as an autistic person, is not my favorite thing, and I don't think it's anyone's favorite thing, really. But we powered through. We found a good schedule for both Seb and I, which is great. I'm glad that it works for both of us. I'm very thankful that we're able to still do the podcast. And I have this outlet for talking about games because 2024 has been awesome. And yeah, it's nice to talk to people on Discord or Blue Sky or wherever else about video games. But it's a lot different when I've known Seb for going on 5 years now. And it's been a great 5 years of just talking about games and talking about what's going on in our lives and how those two things intertwine. And I'm just very, very thankful that we're able to keep going. To echo what Seb said, I hope everyone has a lovely holiday, whatever you celebrate. This is not an easy time of the year for some people. If you don't have a lot of family or a lot of friends, I hope you're able to reach out to someone so you're not spending the holidays by yourself. And I hope you're able to take care of yourself because these are supposed to be the happiest days of the year, but they're not always the happiest days for some folks. So I hope all y'all are taking care of yourselves. But I'm just very thankful for the podcast, very thankful for anybody who even gives us a minute of their time. There's so many flipping podcasts out there with especially white people telling you how you should feel. So great job listening to us, I guess. I love podcasting. Hopefully at some point I can do it about pro wrestling too. Because that's another huge love of mine. But yeah, I'm just so happy with how our list turned out. I think Seb and I have very similar tastes, so it's no surprise that we had a lot of overlapping. But if you've stuck with us for the past 2 hours, it's been, thank you so much, and we're gonna see you in the new year.
Absolutely. So when we come back, we'll reflect on 2024, and then we'll talk about all the new games that are coming out in 2025. So it's gonna be a kind of like a report card reflection, and then I don't think it's gonna be the same episode, but at some point we'll look at every new game that comes out in 2025 because 2025 is gonna be a monster year. I mean, you're gonna have a new Switch 2 coming out. You're gonna have a lot of games got moved to 2025. Potentially, you can see Grand Theft Auto, Metroid Prime, Monster Hunter. There's a ton of games coming out next year, so it's gonna be a loaded year, even bigger than this year, I think. So the top 10 is gonna be even harder next year. So looking forward to that. All right, so that's our episode. That's our show. Thanks for watching, everybody. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. See you later. Bye.
Hi, everybody. Happy New Year.